Welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable.
On today's episode, we speak with Tanay Pant, author, speaker, educator, and head of developer relations at N8N, an up-and-coming automation platform that can connect Airtable to hundreds of other apps and boasts features that Zapier and Integromat lovers will no doubt find impressive. Tanay has been in the technology industry for years and is known for his books, Learning Web-Based Virtual Reality, Building a Virtual Assistant for Raspberry Pi, and Learning Firefox OS Application Development, all published before the age of 22. Tanay tells us about his diverse use of Airtable, both in his personal and professional life. He explains how Airtable and N8N work together. N8N offers an Airtable node with all sorts of options that allow the user to grab one or more records. Then they can pass that data along to other apps, or even manipulate it within N8N itself. In the demo portion of today's episode, Tanay shares two examples with us. The first is an app he built using Airtable, N8N, Typeform, and a product called Mindy that can extract data from an image. Tanay demonstrates how he can quickly and easily snap a picture of a receipt and have that data flow to Airtable, vastly simplifying and streamlining the process of submitting expense reports. The second demo shows us N8N's creative use of Airtable as an internal tool to help on the back end of their site. On a daily basis, the company needs to create JSON files for each application that they integrate with. They use Airtable to store each application name and build the JSON files with a nightly job. Check out the show notes to learn more about N8N and Tanay, or follow him on Twitter at Today1337.
Right. Do you see my screen?
I do.
So I think I'll just show a quick basic demo of how Airtable works with N8N. I think that will help add context for some of the longer workflows that we have. A new workflow starts with just a start node. By itself does nothing. Mm-hmm. And then you can connect different nodes to it. Let me quickly move this down. And you can add a ton of different nodes to it to create as complicated workflows as you'd like. Mm-hmm. So essentially what we have here is an Airtable node, and you have credentials here. So, you'd have API key that you can add. And then you have different operations that you can do. You can append data, delete data, read, update, list. You'd add your base ID here, the table name, and it can return data for you. So I'm connected this to Airtable, which just has one record, and it gets data for you from there. And then you can use it for other things.
That is awesome. I love that. So it can list more than one record at a time.
Sure. I think what we can do, I'll show you later, I think.
Wonderful.
So, okay, I'm going to do a bit of sneak peek here. So we changed this, and I think it's called Codex, if I'm referencing it correctly. So this is going to pull in the data from the node Codex base that we had, and see it's pulling data it has 244 records, and then you get all the details here. And we also have a table view for a more structured outlook.
That is so cool. I can see how that would be extremely powerful.
Yeah. So this is very basic, two node thing, how can you pull data into N8N? Mm-hmm. So this workflow that I was talking about around how we created this mobile app. So I'm not sure how I can share my mobile screen. So I loaded up a video to show how the app actually looks like, but we can take a look at how the backend of the app looks like. So, here we have a type form trigger. So, I have set it up to, there's a form called new type form, because I'm lazy, I didn't rename it. It's gonna take a capture of photo that we can send it. This essentially downloads the image to N8N. This is the product called Mindy. We're going to be using it to sort of predict and get the data out of the receipt. So we have to structure the data before sending it to Airtable, and the names that we have set for the different values are going to correspond with the column names. So, we're going to be pushing data like amount, merchant, date, time, and a couple of other things. Mm-hmm. And this is going to append this data to Airtable. So here I have the type form. So generally what would happen when you're running the app is this would be set to active. And that's for production. So, every time somebody submits something, it does its whole thing. But since we want to see the data flow, I'm going to do a manual run right now. So this is what the type form looks like, very bare bones, but it looks nicer in the app. So I have a receipt ready here. I'm going to drag it. And as it uploads the receipt, and just so you know, like receipt looks something like out of the ordinary, a crumpled receipt. And okay, so what I'm going to do is now execute this workflow. So the webhook is going to be listening for submission from typeform. And as this happens, you see the data got into typeform, image got downloaded. So I think let's see it from the beginning. This just contains the link to the image hosted on typeform. Here we downloaded it into the workflow. So, we can see the binary data that actually came through. Then we extracted information from it, and you see returns a couple of things like taxes, what time this was processed, the total amount, locale, and so on. And since we don't need all the information like tax and so on, like what we do is like we put on this flag keep only set. So whatever we set in this node is going to go forward. Everything else is going to be discarded. Okay. And finally, what we do is we append this into Airtable. So I'm going to move this aside. And here you see, this is something that I parsed earlier. And this was just added to this expense tracker sheet. And like shows the receipt URL and all the data that was parsed out of this receipt. So this was sort of the workflow that our community member built. And what we did was we created an app using Bravo Studio. So I loaded it here. So, we made this with Figma, original design that I had. I can also share a link to this blog post. This shows like how you can do this in detail.
Wonderful.
So yeah, like my design was quite bad, but one of my colleagues helped me improve that. Has two screen, upload a receipt and look at the older receipts. So this is the type form that we just saw. And the good thing on mobile is you can actually take an image, but also upload something that already exists.
Right.
That is a very crumpled receipt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, it finishes uploading. You submit it, and the workflow that I just showed runs in the background. And then you can, go back and load my receipts, and this shows you all the data. And this data is actually being pulled in from Airtable. So basically you have a type form in Bravo Studio app, which is triggering that workflow. And then this data gets added to Airtable, and then the app is pulling this data from Airtable because it's been parsed and so on. So this is like the app that we made.
That is so impressive. Oh my goodness. And obviously, I mean, you could use this at literally any industry, any business, even personal life. Like, so impressive.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun to build as well because, all right, now that you asked, like you mentioned different industries, now I remember a personal project that I was working on. So I find it a bit difficult to sort of track the books that I've been reading, and there's cool things like Goodreads and so on, but I always wanted my own app. And I've been looking to build an app for tracking the books that I've been reading. And, I set goals. It's like, okay, I want to be done with this book maybe by the end of the month, depending on how big the book is. Right. And it tries to keep me on track. Like by now you should have reached page number this or so on. So using Airtable for its backend as well. It's not quite done yet, but hopefully should be done with it soon so that I can share it with the community as well.
Yeah, that is super cool. Yeah, I would love that as well. And it's so cool you can build it for your personal life as well. I just built one. I'm planning a wedding, and I plugged in my wedding date, and it tells me in my checklist all the things I should have had done already.
Nice.
Like, oh, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But that's super cool. So do you ever run into any issues with this app with a receipt that's way too crumpled, or like the amount can't be read properly?
Sure, I think that can happen. Like also if the image quality is not too good. So like image, I think like Mindy generally is a very good tool. Also, I know that they recently released like you can train certain document types and make a custom API out of it. So with N8N, you can also use custom APIs. So if there's a product or a service that doesn't have a node for N8N yet, you can use the API. You can authenticate with it and still use it. So I think like that's something very interesting because like we have been talking a lot more about automating different things and metrics. Some things that we can automate are financial stuff because banks are still sending bank statements which are pieces of paper. So something like that could be very interesting to build with the new custom API trainer that Mindy has, because then you can have a certain document type and then train it to recognize the data that you need for your apps.
Exactly. Right. Kind of like parsing an email template or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
And the last one that I had was this node codex that we created for the different nodes of N8N. So yeah, like every node has different information for it. So we have a docs permalink. So if you go to docs.n8n.io/nodes and /this, that would open up the documentation for a certain node. Then we have the node name. So here we have Airtable, for instance. We also have credential information for all the different nodes. Like so you want to authenticate Airtable. Here's how to get your access token, or depending on how you are authenticating the apps. And this is something that we had to add manually. Is like, what categories does it belong to? Since this is like the first document, it's going to be fun. And then we sort of add here, have we written about this blog post? Have we written any content? So as you see, like we have written some content piece on automating conferences with Airtable. So I think with there, we mentioned about how we capture data with Typeform for participants and create a custom badge for them using the information they get. So we use Banner Bear for that. And and this is the approved column. So, everything looks fine. Multiple of us can go there and click on the approved button, and some stuff, which is like, what's going to be the file name, which goes in a very particular fashion as well. Like this was auto-generated too. Like it's the node name plus .node.json. And this is the path, which is also related to sort of the node name. So a lot of this was populated, I think, except the blog post and the categories field was populated by an N8N workflow. And so once we had this and somebody got a chance to review it, they clicked on this. And what happened then was this workflow was run. I think it was running manually for now. So, the Airtable list. So this would get all the data from that Airtable base. And then we have a split in batches so that we can iterate. It serves sort of as a for loop throughout the workflow. This if node checks, has the approved box been checked? If not, then it's going to go to the next iteration. If it has been, it's going to do some programming. We can also have like custom JS in here. So things, if you want to do some data manipulation that is not possible yet with any inbuilt core node, you can write your own JavaScript functions. And we get some more data on blog posts and so on, create a JSON file. And here we do another check because some nodes, for instance, don't have credentials associated with them. Example would be, if node, split in batches, start node, these are core nodes, so they don't have any credentials. And then we finally convert this to binary and write this to the local N8N repository. So, running this would create, it would go through all of these different nodes and see like, okay, gonna generate JSON files for it. And I can quickly show you how that would look like as well. So this is like a N8N local, like I have cloned the repository locally. So all these exist within, sorry, wrong one, packages, node space, nodes. And let's maybe take a look at Airtable. We have airtable.node.json. And if we open this, we see that the workflow has written this JSON file for us, which contains all the information that we want. And this is going to be read for our website later on. Like it's going to pull in data from this file. We're also going to rehaul sort of how the new node section looks like. So we have a bit of categorization there. So it's like really useful for us. And it generates all of this, which would have been a very annoying thing to do and would have taken a lot of time. So yeah, this is how we automated like this process of generating node Codex file internally.
I'm blown away. I love that use case. Like you're using Airtable to kind of build your website on the back end, right?
Yeah.
So cool.
And I love that it also offers the ability to have sort of manual checks because we want to make sure that the JSON files don't get generated incorrectly, at least for the first few times. So we have the ability to make sure like the categories are correct because there's some degree of human error as well. So we have proper checks in place there. And I think this is still a bit manual at the moment, but what would be really cool to have in future, and like this was built a while back. Now we have a Airtable trigger node, which is gonna enable even cooler stuff. So every time a new version of N8N gets released, it's gonna add a new row to Airtable. Mm-hmm. And once that is done, another workflow can detect, oops, this Airtable has a new row. It's gonna notify somebody. It's like, hey, can you add the details for it? Right. And once the person does that and takes it off, what it's gonna do is generate it. And then it's going to create a pull request on GitHub. So we automated one step further. So that's something that we want to improve on this workflow. So it's like another iteration to make it a bit more automated.
Of course. Yeah, that is awesome. My favorite part about all of that is that you have that ability to turn it into a for loop. So you can get more than one record and push them into different things that you need to do with it, which is something I think a lot of people struggle with when they're trying to build automations.
Yeah. I think like there's a lot of things in terms of N8N which makes it quite powerful. I think like, every day there's different apps coming through, and like, of course, this is going to take a while for different products to catch up in terms of creating nodes for it. You can still use HTTP request node, for instance, to use these APIs, but also like for the nodes that we have, as you mentioned, like Airtable itself releases rather quickly. It might also take a bit of time until like somebody requests to add a new feature. If that doesn't happen immediately, like people can still use those features by using like the HTTP request node or doing some manipulation with JavaScript in the function node. So I think that's like the sweet spot of the sort of this new generation of tools. Like it's not just point A to point B or like small demos. It can build really complicated stuff. And like we've been chatting with a couple of folks because I think like N8N is a really community-backed product. We have a strong community, and the best part about it is it's all over the place. Like people are using N8N and like Airtable, these different products for so many different things. Last year, I learned somebody's using N8N. There's the Swedish company Miranix, which is using N8N on ships, which is something that I would have never thought of. So it's just really cool to see like what people build, and it's just very inspirational. Yeah.
It really is. I couldn't agree more. That's my favorite part about being involved in this community is seeing all the different use cases and how far it really stretches is so cool.
Yeah, that's true.
Excellent. Oh my gosh. Well, that was so impressive. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
And thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Yay, of course. And where can our listeners go to learn more about you and N8N?
For N8N, I'd recommend coming onto our website, n8n.io. Also, if you have any questions, we have a really strong community, community.n8n.io. And if you want to get in touch with me, have any questions, you can find me on Twitter, Tanay1337, same on LinkedIn. Also, you can write to me at tanay@n8n.io.
Perfect. And we'll put all of that in the show notes, of course.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Tanay. That was wonderful. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to give it a like or hit us up on social at BuiltOnAir. We always love to hear your comments and suggestions. And don't forget to subscribe to catch new episodes when they release. It helps us keep the podcast going.